Sastrik
Tendriya Prana Sharira Sada
Tendriya Prana Sharira Isara Asanta Kamona Sura Novitnya Jito Vyasaneshu Nispraha
Vijnachito Vyasaneshu Nishpriha
Shuteshu Visteshu Neswastrik
Shuteshu Drushteshu Nishprastrik
Tendriya Prana Sharira Jisara
Tendriya Prana Sharira Jisara
Shanta Kamori Tasura Sura
Santa Kamorata Suro Sura. Not Udvigna, agitated. Chitta is consciousness. Vyasaneshu, in dangerous conditions. Niskriha, without desire. Shruteshu, in things heard of. Especially elevation to heavenly planets. Because of pious activities. Drishteshu, as well as in temporal things seen. Guneshu, the objects of sense gratification. Under the modes of pure nature. Avastadrik, seeing as if insubstantial. Danta, controlling. Indriya, the senses. Prana, the living force. Sharira, the body. Di, and intelligence. Sada, always. Shanta, quieted. Kava, whose material desires. Rahita, completely devoid of. Sura, demoniac nature. Sura, although born in a demoniac family. Translation: although Prahlad Maharaj was born in a family of Asuras, he himself was not an Asura but a great devotee of Lord Vishnu. Unlike the Asuras, he was never envious of Vaishnavas. He was not agitated when put into danger, and he was neither directly nor indirectly interested in the fruit of activities described in the Vedas. Indeed, he considered everything material to be useless, and therefore he was completely devoid of material desires. He always controlled his senses and life air, and being of steady intelligence and determination, he subdued all lusty desires. Please repeat. Although Prahlad Maharaj was born in a family of Asuras, he himself was not an Asura but a great devotee of Lord Vishnu. Unlike the other Asuras, he was never envious of Vaishnavas. He was not agitated when put into danger. And he was neither directly nor indirectly interested in the fruit of activities described in Vedas. Indeed, he considered everything material to be useless, and therefore he was completely devoid of material desires. He always controlled his senses and life air, and being of steady intelligence and determination, he subdued all lusty desires. From this verse we discover that man is not qualified or disqualified simply by birth. Prahlad Maharaj was an Asura by birth, yet he possessed all the qualities of perfect Brahman, Brahmanya, Shila, Sampana. Anyone can become a fully qualified Brahmin under the direction of a spiritual master. Prahlad Maharaj provided a vivid example of how to think of the spiritual master and accept his directions calmly. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Shri Sri Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Considered everything material to be useless, and therefore he was completely devoid of material desires. He always controlled his senses and life here, and being of steady intelligence and determination, he subdued all lusty desires. So, this is very relevant for us, because we may not have been born in a family of devotees, or we may have been born in a family of devotees. But it's something which is very important is the association we keep. If you associate with thieves, then it's quite likely you'll become a thief. If you associate with people who drink alcohol, then it's quite likely you'll be doing the same thing. In Hindi, it's Jisi Sangha, Visaranga. So by that association you become, so just like Jayananda is wearing saffron clothes, and Jayananda, have you ever put your saffron clothes in the washing with white? You'd probably have to be awake to do that. So if you put that in with the whites, and your whites aren't going to stay white for very long, they're going to change. And sometimes that happens. Just like recently I put in, I had a red kurta, and I'd had it for some time, and I thought, I've had it for some time, it's been washed so many times, the dye is not likely to come out, so I put it in with some white dhotis, and they got affected by it. So similarly with ourselves, even if we think we're strong, we've been in Krishna consciousness some time, we think we can take the association of those who are opposed to Krishna conscious principles, then we can become affected. So, of course, this raises the question then, why would devotees to go out on the street to spread Krishna consciousness, going on Harinam, giving books out, etc.? Why would we do this? Why do we have so many programs where we associate with people whose interests are more materialistic? It's because we are not there to take association, but we're there to give association. Not that we think ourselves to be better. That is totally against the Vaishnava mood. The Vaishnava mood is to be humble. So there's this saying, there go I, but by the grace of God. So if we see someone doing things we used to do, we shouldn't feel superior. We should feel compassion, think, well, I would be there too if I hadn't come across Krishna consciousness. So my responsibility is to try to give this to other people so that they too can gain what I've gained. There's no need for people to suffer in their ignorance, and they have this knowledge of who they are and what the alternative is, then they too can also become free from their suffering. So there's different symptoms of one who's situated in pure devotion and service, and the first symptom is, anybody? Relief from material distresses, yeah. Material desires. Material desires means material distress. We spend so much effort protecting our material desires, but actually they're the causes of suffering. And Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita that an intelligent person seeks out the causes of the suffering and they give them up. So if we understand the cause of our suffering, just like you see it, someone pointed out to me, who was it now? It was one young person recently said to me that, oh yeah, it was Pratap, he's young enough. We were in Glasgow the other day, and we were going to the centre, Om Sweet Om in Glasgow, view something, and he's seen a cigarette packet on the ground, and the warnings were quite explicit. It says that basically, if you smoke this, you're going to have an early death, and they show you a picture of your blackened lungs and stuff like that. He says, how can people still do that? So even though they're faced with the danger, so this is, what would we call that? If we know something is going to cause us harm, and we can see it happening, and still we do it, then what does that mean? That is one way to put it. Yeah. It means that our intelligence is telling us this is going to harm you, but we're not listening to it. So we have the ability to be first-class intelligence, which is what, Jayananda, what's first-class intelligence? You just forgot. It means that we hear something and what? We remember it and follow it. So to remember it means when we hear about something, then we practice it and then we remember it. But if we don't practice it, then we forget it. So use it or lose it. When some instruction comes for your improvement in spiritual life, if you use it, then you won't lose it. You won't lose that consciousness. But we think, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. Then how far away is tomorrow? It's always another day away, isn't it? Just like the carrot on the stick in front of the donkey, it's just one step away. But it's always going to be one step away, and tomorrow's always going to be another day away. So like they say, there's no time like the present, because tomorrow never comes. And so therefore, I remember when I think I was 20 at the time, not long before I joined the temple, and I decided I was giving up smoking again. We just happened to be talking about the subject because it happens to come into the, as an example. And I said to my friend, who later on became a devotee, Goridas, I said, I'm thinking of giving up smoking again. No, I said, I'm giving up smoking again. He said, what do you mean again? He said, you can only give it up once. And I realised, wow, that's quite sharp, but it's true. If you go back to it, it means you haven't given it up. Then I became resolute in purpose. I thought, okay, that's it, I've given it up. That means no going back. No matter what, I'm giving it up. And it was difficult, but I thought, I'm not going through this difficulty again. That's it. I'm going through it once, and that's the end of it. So this is the same with any kind of material desire we have. But the thing is, with Krishna consciousness, we're not just giving something up. We get something in replacement for it. Param drisva nivartati, giving up such attachments by experiencing a higher taste, one is fixed in consciousness. So, the cause of having material desires is material reactions when we try to fulfill those. So simply just giving things up is not good enough, because Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita that if we give something up but our mind is meditating on them, then we're deluding ourselves and we're called a pretender. We're not really giving things up. So we all may have a bit of a pretender in our consciousness. We haven't completely given everything up, but step by step, we have the opportunity that between now and before we leave this body, we want to be in a position where we've given all the things up which are holding us back. And we've not leave it to the last minute, think, okay, I'll speak to an astrologer and find out when I'm going to die. And when they say, okay, you're going to die in 2042, then in 2041, I'll get serious. We don't think like that, because there's no guarantee. Anything can happen. Like even, I remember many years ago when I used to read the newspapers, there was one person who did this astrology column, and then she did it for many years. And then it was published that such and such, the great clairvoyant, had passed away. And my first thought was, I bet she didn't see it coming. And so we don't really have that true sense of trikalagya. Trikalagya means what? Three means tree. Kala means gya. Yeah. Knowledge of past, present, and future. So, of course, in astrology, Vedic astrology, there can certainly be some experts in that. And, for example, there was one devotee, he did
a regressive chart for me, and he went back to when I was 16, and he described various difficulties, and he was spot on. I went through 3 major difficulties in that time, and he spotted them. So these things are there. You know, our life is charted out, and like Prahlad Maharaj also said, we're speaking about Prahlad Maharaj, the great devotee. He said that one's happiness and distress is already charted out because of what we did in our past life. So you would think, okay, well, in that sense, we don't have any freedom, but we do. We have the freedom how what we're going to do with that happiness and distress. So, for example, someone may experience some difficulty in life, so you could take it, what you're going to do in that difficult situation. Are we going to take shelter of Krishna and be free from that difficulty once and for all? Or are we going to take shelter in something material and create some further reactions and compound the situation? This is the freedom we have. We have the freedom of choice. That regardless of what situation you're in, we always have the opportunity to choose. I read one book some time ago called, see if I remember the title, something to do with search for meaning. It was by a chap called Viktor Frankl, who was one of the fathers of psychotherapy, I believe, or a particular branch of it. He was imprisoned in the Second World War in a concentration camp. And although the people were starving, they were like skin on bone without any flesh practically. And though they were in very difficult situation, he noticed that even in the most difficult situations, as long as people had the will to live, they would live. But he could see that the moment someone gave up that will to live, then their countenance changed, and within a day they were gone. So the very will itself to live is a choice, even in the most difficult of situations. So Jesi Sangha Vesi Ranga, by the association we keep, we become. So even if we're born into a good family, Srila Prabhupada explains that if we take bad association, we can become like that. Or if we're born into a family of not so pious persons, or here the term is used, asura, which means ungodly, then if we take good association still, we can become a devotee. And Prahlad Maharaj, he was only 5-year-old, so you might think, well, what association could he have had at that age? But he was coming from a previous life. So we understand that when the wife of Hiranyakashipu, whose name begins with a K, Kayadu, when she was pregnant, then the demigods were already so much afraid of Hiranyakashipu and his power, and how they were so much subjugated. They were terrorized by him. Then they were thinking, what's going to happen if we have some small Hiranyakashipus running about the place? You know, he's bad enough, what to speak of, you know, having some kind of lineage. So they're contemplating what to do, even the dastardly deed of wondering if they should kill the mother and child or the child within the womb. And Narada Muni, he appeared to them and he said, even if you wanted to kill such a child, then you could not do so, because this is a great devotee of Lord Vishnu. He is protected. So even before Prahlad Maharaj was born, he was already a great devotee. So the Lord had directed him to take birth in the family of asuras, or ungodly persons, demoniac persons, for different purposes, for his pastimes, and also to demonstrate the feature of Bhaktavatsala. So what does Bhaktavatsala mean, anyone? What was that? Yeah. He protects the devotees. So according to our activities in the material world, then our interactions with the modes of material nature, then we invite different reactions, mixture of good and bad reactions. But when we surrender to Krishna, then we're no longer under the control of the material energy. We're in Krishna's hands. So whatever happiness and distress we get, then Krishna allows that. So we have to remember this when we're going through different things, that Krishna's allowed this temporary happiness or distress. Let me not be too attached to it. Let me not be too averse to it. And let me just accept it as Krishna's arrangement. So in this way, this verse, Matrasparshas Tikantaya Shitosna Sukadukada Agamapano Nachas Tams Titikshashvabarataha, that one of Krishna's first instructions to Arjuna is that we have to learn to become tolerant. Just like, and how do we do that? By remembering that happiness and distress come and go like the temporary seasons. So just now we're in winter, and we know it will pass in due course of time. Even if we don't get much of a summer in Scotland, we know at least, officially it will be called summer. And then when summer comes, we know that will also pass. But if we become too attached to summertime, then when winter time comes, then we become more miserable. But if we remember, okay, this summer is here, that will go, winter come, that will go. So we become steady in consciousness. So similarly, when happiness and distress comes, and we remember that they're temporary, they're fleeting, they will come and go, then we become steady in consciousness. Shishikoni time apishashiki. And here in this verse, it's mentioned that even when Prahlad Maharaj was put into danger, then he didn't become agitated. And Krishna explains this: we have to learn to tolerate without being disturbed. And this is not an easy thing, because in Kali Yuga, people are disturbed so easily. Someone slights our reputation in the smallest way and we become disturbed, isn't it? We've got such false ego. And what have we got to be egotistic about, really? What have we really done with our life in terms of, some great contribution to the world? But we have such an ego that we cannot stand anyone slighting us, or the slightest bit of discomfort, and we run to the chemist. We're just looking for the quickest fix possible. The inability to tolerate is there in Kali Yuga because it is part of the nature of the Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga is the age we're living in, age of quarrel and hypocrisy. And it's characterized, does anybody remember any of the qualifications of the illustrious Kali Yuga specimen? Laziness. Can't be bothered. Laziness. Anybody here not lazy? Sometimes we even think we're not lazy, but in so many ways we are lazy. Like sometimes we don't apply our intelligence. That can be a type of laziness. Physically, sometimes we're lazy. Or we sometimes cut corners, right? We forget that Krishna is seeing everything. We cut corner in our service. That's a type of laziness that's giving into Kali Yuga. Laziness is one. What else? Short-lived. In previous ages, it was understood that human beings lived a lot longer. They had a greater lifespan. Yeah, always disturbed. Yeah, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above all, always disturbed. So we're unlucky. We're in an unfortunate situation that even if we're trying to be good, we're surrounded by so much impious atmosphere. So, and above all, always disturbed. So that means that we're easily disturbed. But Prahlad Maharaj here, because he was absorbed in Krishna, then even in the greatest of difficulty, he wasn't agitated. So this learning to tolerate happiness and distress without being disturbed means that we have to be deep in our Krishna consciousness commitment and our surrender. And the deeper we are attached to Krishna, then the less we're attached to matter, the less we're attached to material desires. And it's not recommended that we try to become desireless. Sometimes this feature of the desireless is described. So what would that mean for a devotee? Oh, so what kind of desires would we have? Yeah, desire to service, desire to please Krishna, desire to please Krishna's representatives. So rather than just desire to please ourselves and our own mind and senses, then just like we were reading earlier there, Rameshwar and Radhavallabha, those two devotees were in charge of a whole group of devotees who were given quite a mammoth task of surrendering to doing something which was 17 times more than they thought they could have done at a push already. They had put a material concept on something, thought this is what we can do. So according to their own ability, that's what they could do. But Prabhupada, their spiritual master, pushed them. The spiritual master will do this. Sometimes he'll push the devotee to do better than they think they can, because Krishna is Aporashya. He's beyond the range of the senses. So if we want to know what is beyond the range of the mind and senses, then we have to be stretched beyond that. If we simply want to stay within the confine of our limited mind and senses, that's what we'll stay. That's our concept of life, our concept of ourself, our concept of Krishna, of God. Then it will remain like that. So therefore, back to Vinod Thakur says, give up all self-comforting. So that doesn't mean to say, okay, let's just go around in barefoot in the snow. We're not looking just to perform some unnecessary austerity, but we perform our service regardless of what difficulty comes, and we perform our service which is asked of us regardless of whether we think we're qualified, whether we think it's impossible or not, because like Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, that we have a right to perform our duty, but we are not entitled to the fruits of the action. But because since time immemorial we have cultivated in us this work reward system of the material world. I mean, who goes to work and gets paid nothing? Who wants to do that? Sometimes people might do that simply for the sake of, okay, I'll work for you for a week for nothing if you pay me after that. But I remember when I first started working, there was some mix-up with my wages. It wasn't much to speak of, but it was enough to make me think that if they don't pay me soon, then I ain't going to continue with this. And finally they sorted it out, but I was acutely feeling that I'm giving my time to this job, doing this job for this company who's benefiting from me, but I'm getting nothing from it, and I'm not prepared to continue to do it for nothing. But a devotee, they appear to be doing so much for nothing, but actually it's not for nothing. Their investment is different. It's a spiritual investment. And it's not something of the imagination, it's tangible. We actually feel the material fever diminishing. Material fever means desires. Just like every day we're praying Samsaradava, Nalalita Loka, Tranaya Karunya Ganaganatvam, Praptasya Kalyana, Gunarnavasya Vandegaroshi Charanavindam. Any translation? No, the spiritual master is an ocean of mercy. He's like a cloud which pours water on the forest fire. You knew what you meant, right? So the material desires, they're burning, right? The burning desire. We hear that term, burning desire. And sometimes we try to put out a fire by putting some oil on it. Generally we don't, but if you were to try to do that, then it may tend to go down a little bit, but once the oil catches, then it continues to burn higher and longer. So putting fuel on the fire doesn't put out the desire. It may temporarily bring it down, just like even you make a fire of wood and it's blazing, you put some more wood on it, then it tends to go down to begin with and it comes up again. So similarly, when we satisfy material desires, it seems like, okay, that's it, calm down now. Now we can go on with life. But then what happens is we've fed that desire and it comes up again, it doesn't go away. If satisfying material desires where like you just had to satisfy it once, then it'd be satisfied, then we'd all be free from them. It'd be quite peaceful, but it doesn't. So we don't put fuel on the fire, and we also extinguish the fire with the rain cloud of mercy from the spiritual master. So that rain cloud of mercy comes in the form of his directions, instructions, where he guides us how to stay clear of the pitfalls of material life. And thankfully for the devotees, it's easier than we can imagine, because simply we have to make an adjustment internally. Even if externally your karma may be that you're a wealthy person and you've got so much material facilities, you don't have to take a vow of poverty to become free from material desires. You simply have to realize that Krishna is the proprietor of everything, and whatever we have obtained by our karmic quota, then we utilize that in Krishna's service. Like there was one devotee of Lord Chaitanya 500 years ago, Kolavecha Sridhar, and his occupation was to sell bananas, right? Was it bananas he was selling? And even though he made a very small pittance, so basically selling bananas means there'd be banana trees. So previously in the Vedic system of social security, would be planting trees and digging wells. Sometimes you see this as pious activities. It means that if you're digging wells and planting pious trees, such as fruit trees, then it means that there's always water and there's food for people, even if they're in some difficulty. Just like I was in South Africa before, and there's many fruit trees around, and people take the fruit from the trees and sell it by the side of the road. And it's meant just for taking for their own personal good, their own personal consumption for the day. But what happens is people become greedy and they start taking so much and they want to sell it and make some profit. And then as people start competing for the for the fruits on the trees, then the fruits get picked before they're unripe. And then you have turf wars and all sorts of things, simply because of that exploitative mentality, rather than just taking what we need. So anyway, this is a pious activity to plant these trees. And Kolavecha Sridhar, so he would pick the bananas for the day and he'd sell a small amount, and with half of his earnings he would use for worship of the Lord, worship of Mother Ganges. And the half would be for maintenance. And he was so poor, practically he just had one piece of cloth to wear. But Lord Chaitanya accepted his service and he was satisfied. And then on the other hand, we had Pundarik Vidyanidhi, who was a very opulent personality, practically living like a king. And Gadadhar Pandit went to see him. And was it Gadadhar Pandit or Gadadhar Das? Can't remember. Yeah, Gadadhar Pandit it was. And Lord Chaitanya told him to go and observe Pundarik Vidyanidhi. So he was dressed in fine clothes and he seemed to be enjoying the luxuries of life. And Lord Chaitanya told him, so you might be misled to thinking this person is a sense enjoyer, but if you quote this verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, then you will see. So when Gadadhar Pandit seen him, and he was thinking, he is a sense enjoyer. You know, look at him, look at the lavish life he's living. He quoted one verse from Bhagavatam explaining the separation of Krishna and his devotees, topmost devotees. Then at that point, Pundarik Vidyanidhi, he went into some spiritual ecstasy of intense separation. And Lord Chaitanya revealed that actually, and Gadadhar Pandit took initiation from Pundarik Vidyanidhi. And in the Gaura Gunadesh Dipika, the lamp which illuminates the personalities of Chaitanya Leela, it was described that Pundarik Vidyanidhi is Maharaj Vrishabhanu, and Gadadhar Pandit, of course, is the incarnation of Radharani. And Maharaj Vrishabhanu is the father of Radharani, so that eternal relationship was already there. So Prahlad Maharaj's lessons here are lessons for all of us, that we too can also rise to that level. Even though we may have came from an impious background, then by applying Krishna conscious lifestyle, Krishna conscious, living by Krishna conscious principles, then we can also obtain the protection and the shelter of the Lord. Sometimes that happens, we find ourselves in some difficulty and we pray to the Lord for protection. Krishna, 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 Rakshamam, protect me. And then there's that saying, Mare Krishna Rakike, Rake Krishna Marike. So Rake or Raksha means protection. So if Krishna wants to protect me, so the devotee who's surrendered thinks if Krishna wants to protect me, who can harm me? And if Krishna wants me to come into any harm, then who can protect me? So in this way, the devotee is leaving everything to Krishna. But that doesn't mean to say we leave our service to Krishna. We have to engage ourselves. It's not like we lie in our bed thinking, well, I'll just leave everything to Krishna. If he empowers me, I'll get up out of my bed this morning. The alarm, that's Krishna telling you to get up. So I think if there's any questions. And so why was Prahlad Maharaj such a great devotee? It's because he controlled his senses, and therefore his intelligence was steady and he became determined. And this way he subdued all material desires. And at the end of the purport, Srila Prabhupada says that Prahlad Maharaj provided a vivid example of how to think of the spiritual master and accept his directions calmly. So this is the opportunity we have every day, is when we come across whatever difficulties we have, then we try to think of the instructions of the spiritual master, how we can overcome those difficulties. And instead of taking shelter in the mind or our own faulty intelligence, then we take shelter of the spiritual intelligence, which is coming from the spiritual master, the Shastra, the books, and from the saintly persons, Mahajano Yena Gatasa Panta. So those who have already are on the platform of saintliness and spiritual elevation, then we follow in their footsteps, then we also arrive at the same place. Okay. Any questions or comments? Okay. Gruntaraj, Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Iskon Govinda ki, Shri Prabhupada ki, Shri Shri Gaura Maharaj ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande. Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki.